Hello everyone, welcome to CareersTalk. I'm Sunan Sharma, an agile consultant based in Netherlands, and we have just started a new series where we are talking to professional scrum trainers, PhDs from around the world. They will be helping us with the most commonly asked Scrum Master interview questions shared by our WhatsApp group members. And today questions were asked in companies such as IBM, Cognizant, TCS, and Deloitte. And we are fortunate to have Ralph Jocham, a professional Scrum trainer joining us from Switzerland. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Careers Talk, and if you find the content helpful, please hit that like button. Now, without further delay, let's get started. So, welcome, Ralph. Thanks for giving your time today. Could you please tell us about yourself in brief, and then we'll dive into the session. Ralph, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Anat. Thanks for having me. My background is I started off as a programmer, studied computer science in '97, and through different classical approach, then the unified process, extreme programming, Scrum. I've been doing now Scrum for over 20 years in different domains, environments, regulated. It works great, and basically since 2010, it's a long time. Since 2010, I'm a trainer with Scrum.org since March 2010. And since then I've been living the agile life, helping customers implement it, but also been as a PhD, teaching people, helping people understand Scrum and how you can make it work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Ralph. So, Ralph, if you allowed, shall we start?
Yes, absolutely. Let's dive into it.
Okay. So, very first question is it's again a scenario-based question. So, let's say in a recent sprint, the team faced significant challenges with estimating the user stories accurately. That lead to a variation in velocities. So, how would you analyze the root cause as a Scrum Master, and what strategies would you implement to improve the estimation in the future upcoming sprints? So, that's the question, Ralph, for you. Yeah.
Honestly, looking at that question, I probably wouldn't look into that so much. Now, velocity, even if is output, what is the quantity of what we create every sprint? But in the end of the day, what really matters is customer outcome, solving their problem, helping them with what they're doing. I think that velocity is a vanity metric. It feels really good to have a high one. But if you deliver lots of the wrong product, it's still the wrong product in the very end. Now, for me, I would rather go ahead and look into, did we have a good sprint goal? And if the velocity was lower than we thought about, did we still reach the sprint goal? And look into that, and then work backwards from this one here, because a sprint goal is outcome. Assuming you have a good sprint goal, you know how to, but sometimes I see sprint goals, they're just a shopping list. It doesn't really change the output thinking then in this case. But if you have a good sprint goal with a good outcome described to that, and maybe if you don't reach your velocity target, if you have one, but you still reach the outcome. So what is the underlying problem? Now, but just to entertain the other thought, let's say you have a velocity which is really fluctuating all the time. Then I would look into team stability. Can the people work focused, which is one of the Scrum values? How many interruptions do we have within a sprint? Because for me, also a sprint is a container of stability. Once the team has committed to the sprint goal, we are pretty much hands off and we let them do their work. And unless they come back to us with a question, asking for help, a problem, I would assume everything is going fine. But just for me to quickly summarize, don't confuse output with customer outcome. And in the end of the day, it's all about customer outcome.
Absolutely, Ralph. I think you have raised a very good point. People got confused this often. Your sprint can be successful even though you've not finished all your user stories. But people, I think in a different direction. They thought like you have to finish all your user stories in able to make your sprint successful. So I think you have raised a great point over there, Ralph.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, one thing to add on top of that, I think this is, you have two kinds of efficiency. You have resource efficiency and flow efficiency. And the first efficiency you should be aiming for to get going is the flow efficiency. And this is really when I would rather think in throughput in our sprint. How long do the items remain within a sprint? Kind of how do they flow through that? And if you want to get this going, you're much more capable of delivering down increments every sprint. Now, once you have the flow efficiency kind of checked off, then you can think about resource efficiency. But it should be the second thought, never the first one, because once you go for resource efficiency from the get-go, you get sub-optimization, which basically causes problems in the whole system.
Correct, correct. And would you also like to touch base a little bit on a estimation part, like if team is struggling with the estimation as a Scrum Master, how we can help them?
So I stopped doing time-based estimation in 2003, I guess, if I remember right, going back to the James Grenning white paper, How to Avoid Analysis Paralysis While Estimating.
No estimate.
Yeah, and essentially this is when he talks about relative estimation and planning poker. This is where this idea from planning poker is coming from. So don't do time-based estimation, because something. It's a good example. Is a marathon. It's this 42.195 kilometers. Some people do it in 2 hours, some in 3, some in 5, some never. The effort is the same, but the capabilities of all those individuals plays a big role in how fast they can make progress. So you cannot decouple, or you cannot equate hours, man hours with progress, because what takes me a day, you might do in 2 hours, because you're better at doing that. So this is the problem with time-based estimation. This is what's the benefit in relative estimation. You decouple the progress, the velocity from the people doing the work. You can just say, this is so much work. And then you can observe over time the velocity, how well this team will make progress given their environment, maybe the office they're working in, the tooling they have, how well they know each other, how stable the team configuration is, all of those factors. And once this is fairly stable, you get a good idea how much work you can do. But every time you change something in the team, every time you change something in the environment, you change the velocity, but you don't see it immediately. You cannot calculate the velocity, you can only observe it. It's like your body weight. You can't lose weight by thinking about it. You can exercise more, you can eat less, you can do something else. And then through your behavior, your weight will change. And it's the same thing with the velocity in a team. That's nothing you can set, determine, or calculate. It's only something you can observe. So basically getting out of time-based estimation to relative estimation is a good starting point, but down the road, go into right sizing. These items are about the same size. Now let's measure how many we can do in a sprint for that. And then you get much more into this throughput value stream thinking essentially. And I guess that's where every organization should want to go there at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Ralph. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. So second one is, let's imagine the product owner introduce a critical change mid of the sprint, and this particular change is going to hamper the team's ability to meet the sprint goal. So how would you as a Scrum Master manage this kind of situation to ensure a balance between to accommodating the changes versus the maintaining the commitment to the sprint deliverables? So that's the little tricky, Ralph. Yeah.
Well, I mean, first overall, I think you need to go ahead and assess the situation. But my first basic instinct tells me I would push back and say no. Because again, a sprint is a container of stability. You have the sprint goal, the team planned for that, they're committed to that in the sprint planning. And every time, if they know we will always be disrupted, they will not really commit because they can't work focus, or two important values in Scrum. But then maybe instead of saying no, that's kind of probably causes problems, other problems. Maybe you can just say, this has happened in the past. Important things have popped up and we jumped on them and it turned out they weren't that important. And, putting the sprint goal at risk, is it really, this is what you want? Now, how about that? I mean, do you have always this option in Scrum to cancel the sprint? You can just say, okay, if this is so important for you, I tell the developers, throw everything overboard, stop what we have done, and we plan immediately your change, and then we do that. But this has cost associated. Are you willing to pay that money? Because if everything is important, nothing is important, then you're all over the place. Or you could also maybe suggest, how about this? We we run a small experiment on the side. Now we try something out, we get in contact, and by the end of the sprint, we should have some data. And based on that data, we can be informed whether it's meaningful and what you want. And if the answer is yes, guess what? We will jump on it first thing in the next sprint. And that's also the beauty about having, let's say, shorter sprints, let's say 2 weeks, for example. It means the waiting time is never too long. On average, you're halfway through. So we're just, this week, let's just wrap everything up. And next sprint, if your idea turns to be right, we'll do it the very first thing. My observation is that if the developers always get interrupted when something else important pops up, they're not putting their teeth into it. They just become, you get away from the outcome thinking to output thinking again. They start to think about excuses, all of the good things. Basically, the self-managing part will disappear.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so this one is interesting. So two team members having some disagreement about the technical approach for a specific high priority user story. So that is causing a friction between the team. So how would you, as a Scrum Master, facilitate a resolution and promote a collaborative environment while respecting the individual perspective? So yeah, Ralph, it's a common scenario which we face as a Scrum Master in a lot of projects. Ralph, yeah.
So yes, I think the interesting thinking is here that we kind of afraid of conflict. And conflict, I wouldn't say isn't great, but I believe that conflict managed well is good because we're not always in agreement. So we need to find a way to handle and cope with it. And I think the situation you're describing in your scenario here is what I like to refer to as the groan zone. It's like you're at the starting point, you explore different ideas, but then you need to converge again kind of towards an answer. And somewhere in between, you need to, when you start to compress, remove, that's kind of the groan zone. And this is where we have those unpleasant conversations. And we have to work through those ones. And this is really where I think a good Scrum Master or facilitation skills overall can help. That we bring the people together and then through using of good mechanisms and practices, get a way to funnel different ideas, weigh them, and then at some point, some idea will basically win out and will be chosen. And I think the problem often is that, as a developer or as a person in general, you don't want to be wrong. And if you manage to get a good process in place, and a good process essentially is defined through having a good purpose. It is very participatory. You have a good process in place, kind of which you make easy for the people to follow and understand. So therefore, it's also transparent, and it should be healthy. Kind of that we really again, I would put the Scrum values in place and maybe some other things as well. And in that regard, I think I would probably aim for some practices like for the liberating structures, tracker consulting, which is really nice because you get critiqued without being personally attacked by that feeling. Or maybe Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats is a good practice where you kind of really neutrally look at things. And then by just looking at that, it becomes clear this looks better. And I think as a person, if you realize my idea is not winning, but because you have been part of this process, you talked about everything, we're all in agreement, and that's easier for you to just, looking at this right now, I know what's the right thing, we should do the other one. That's cool for me. That's how I would basically approach the situation.
Great. Thank you for that, Ralph. Okay, sounds great. Okay, now let's talk about retrospective. So there are like 2 questions in this. So very first one is that the retrospective seems to be repetitive from a team's perspective. So they're not finding it useful. And the other thing is the team is not implementing the improvements or the action items over the period of time. So how do you work with this kind of situation? How do you measure the effectiveness of the retrospective sessions, because now the Scrum Master and the team are struggling both ways? So that's the question, Ralph.
Okay. Well, no, I've been to places where I was going to a place where the retrospective was one person was sitting down, they had a PowerPoint slide open, and the Scrum Master basically typed in, okay, what do we improve or something like that, and okay, half an hour, cool, these are the things, and then they saved it, they got up and walked out of it. It was just like a check-off item. And that's really not the proper idea. I think a really good retrospective, again, goes back to facilitation, well facilitated. So I would really see the Scrum Master in charge by observing the team, coming up with, I think there's room for improvement. I'll do this retrospective practice. And there are many out there these days. There's good books out there, there's good websites, and so many other ideas you could be doing. Maybe in the summertime, take them out. I did retrospectives in a beer garden. There's studies about that. If you take people out of their classical environment, they will come up with better, newer ideas, fresher ideas. Sometimes just changing the room can be helpful in that regard as well, so that we take people out of their mental models, classical way of thinking. But then the other thing is that maybe so I have also seen retrospectives where they came up with, 10 points, 10 improvement points. It's too many things. I'd like to have one improvement item. And then really, if possible, like in older versions of the Scrum Guide, it was even mentioned, kind of whatever you realize in the retrospective basically becomes part of the next sprint backlog. I like that because it made it clear that you have to take action on it. On the other hand, and this is why it's not in the Scrum Guide anymore, is there could be situations when you realize we need to change something, but you also realize we can't do this right now. But then the Scrum Guide will tell you have to do it in the next sprint, and kind of like, so this is the reason behind it. But really make sure, bring in focus, what is the most important thing to improve, and if there's no good reason, bring it into the sprint backlog, make it the topmost item. We work on that this sprint. And always in the next retrospective, in the follow one, look at what we committed to change the last one, and did we do it? Hand on heart. And did it help us? And if the answer is yes, well, stick to it. If the answer is it didn't help, well, then maybe throw it overboard again. Don't add more ballast, which is unhelpful. Yeah, so this is my thoughts here.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. Next one is again with respect to specific team member. So let's say one of the team member is consistently falls short of the expectation. That is affecting the team performance also. So how you can help as a Scrum Master, how you can address the performance concerns while maintaining a supportive and a motivative team environment. So that was the question, Ralph.
Okay. So for me, it would be interesting to know, has this person performed well in the past? If the answer is yes, then probably something is happening in those people's maybe personal life. So in this situation, I would seek a conversation, maybe grab a coffee together and just say, you know what, you seem off. Everything okay? Anything I can help you with? Just probe really, really carefully. And this is really where personal coaching skills come in handy, kind of asking the right questions, navigating it, asking for allowance, and all of those things here. I had once this case where there was a good developer and suddenly he wasn't anymore. And then I talked to him, and it turned out that he was going through a divorce and it wasn't going easy. So, I mean, his head was in another place. I could totally follow them. And so then we just say, oh, I'm sorry to hear about that. Now the question is, do you want to keep it to yourself, which I would respect, or do you want to share it with the team, which I would think is the better approach, because they should know about this as well. And so at the end, he agreed with that. So he shared it with the team, and so that could help him professionally, like if something, hey, or personally as well, kind of maybe having a coffee with him as well. Took 3 months, and then everything was back to normal. Everything was sorted out in his personal life, and the team was better than before. Now, if this person was never a performer, this raises a totally different question, because why the hell did this person end up in our organization? Now, this is really where, I don't want to point finger here, but this is where I really want to find out, how is the hiring process working? was this person chosen by HR and just thrown into our team, or what else has happened in the past? There are so many things you could look into and hopefully improve. So I personally, what I like to do is I like the Scrum team to hire their future colleague themselves. So they come up with the skills they're looking for. They can't look up for the traits in the person they're looking for. Then I talk to the people. Then I would maybe pair them up, and everybody gets half an hour. Maybe we come up with a questionnaire. What are the things we are looking forward? Can check it off, and then I would ask the team, okay, from all those people we have been talking to, or you have been talking to, which 2 ones would you like to have? You will get only one, but which kind of, if the other one can't, which one would it be? And then I would go with that. And if this person turns out to be a non-performer, it's their problem. They can't point to me, they can't point to HR. So turn the game around in that situation. Yeah. So the way I like to think about it. So now, but let's say you have a low performer in your team, and well, you have this person now. Work with this person. How can you, and these are the unpleasant conversations. You probably have to tell them you are not performing well enough for the team. What do you think you could be doing? What do you think how I could help you with, and so on, and work with that person. And if this works out, great, essentially invest to bring them up. And then you have a good team player as well. If this doesn't work, well, maybe you have to cut the cord and just say thank you. But this is the way I think about it. If you're a good player, you're always on the playing field. If you're not so good playing right now, you're on the bench. But if you're on the bench for all the time, essentially you're back onto the market. In the end of the day, the way I like to think about it is you have to be loving but uncompromising. And the compromise would be towards the real Scrum team and the product you're building.
Okay, sounds great. Okay. I think you have covered a lot of scenarios in that. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so the next one is your product owner is frequently not available for the backlog refinement sessions, and of course it's affecting the team ability to prioritize the work. So how would you address this concern, this particular issue, with your team, with your developer, with your product owner?
Well, again, there's so many layers in this question, and my brain is going on all different directions about how I would investigate what I would like to find out is. But the first interesting question for me to get answered is, why is the product owner not available? Is it a personal choice from the product owner? Well, if that's the case, then I would assume that he believes the product we're building is not important. Now, if this is the case, then I would ask the question, so why are we wasting money on that? Shouldn't we spend it some other place? Why are we still doing the work? And then the other thing I would look into is how many people are actually coming to the sprint review. Now, if the sprint review is if I have the indication that this product is probably not that important and nobody shows up for the sprint review, nobody sees an interest to see how the product grows iterative and incremental, sprint by sprint, that would be a really strong indication. And I would have to find the people, well, what's going on here? Now, what I sometimes see is, because this was planned like a year ago, if we think more classical old style, when there's budget allocated, all of that, better do it before you get some budget cuts in the future or something like that. Maybe this is the case, and then you could work accordingly with that. Now, if the product turns out to be very important, and you have this product owner who is not investing enough time into that, well, then I would, as a Scrum Master, try to find out why we have the product owner who we have as a product owner, talk to the right people, maybe get a new product owner, or possibly, if you have good enough people as developers in your team, maybe a good business analyst or someone else who has experience in that field, just say, you know what, you need to step up. I want you to basically somewhat put on the shoes, take on the product ownership, accountability, and help us, the whole Scrum team, to perform better, because we can't trust our product owner to do a good and decent job.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rel, for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so next one is with the respect to stakeholders. So let's say after a release of a new feature, stakeholders provide a not so that great feedback or a negative feedback. So how would you respond to this feedback? And what steps would you like to take to address the concerns while minimizing the disruption to the overall project roadmap? So your team morale is down because of that negative feedback. So what is your take on that,
Yeah,
Ralph?
yeah. Well, you're talking of stakeholders, and stakeholders is a broad term. Stakeholders could be users, influencer, provider, governance, so kind of which category it is. So um, now there could be someone in the organization, an influencer type of stakeholder, and they're just unhappy about what you do. So for me, like in stakeholder, I always think about the stakeholder management matrix, interest in what you're doing, and the influence they could have about that. So there might be someone who doesn't really have an interest, but uh,
Let's say
they
the maybe the
have a big
user who are
influence.
actually using them. So let's say
Okay,
our ultimate
okay.
users.
Because if it's a stakeholder like that I just mentioned, it's probably of political, personal reasons. They're just unhappy, and they just voice their power play essentially. But if the users are really unhappy, I think then I would make sure the product owner and maybe the right developers out of the Scrum team, and then really engage with those ones, find out why a feature wasn't right. Did we have enough conversation up front? Did we maybe invite them in actually to the sprint, to the product backlog refinement? Could they? Now, often the thing is, we work often with user stories, and nobody really knows the definition of a user story. It's a promise for a conversation to take place. Now, did those conversations take place so that we all get the same mental model, the same understanding about why this is important? Because I strongly believe that because we work in the complex where we have the unknown unknowns, the narrative is one of the most powerful tools. The story behind why something is important, what happened in the past, and what are we trying to improve looking forward with what we are doing. And this is the conversation part. And Ron Jeffries also coined this in 2001 with his 3Cs: card, conversation, confirmation. Yeah, you write something down, you talk about it, and then you make sure it's actually right. Now, right now, it wasn't right. So I would believe the second C probably wasn't done correctly. And if we do this, then we can basically take their input, make adjustments, transparency, inspection, adaptation, and go with that and see how this works out. And hopefully then we get it back on track and make the customers happy. Now, on the other hand, you were also asking maybe about the other stakeholders here again. So make a small roadmap. For me personally, because you have the vision, you have the product goal, and the product backlog represents basically the work you do for the current product goal, and then you have your sprint goals working through the product backlog. So, but sometimes it could be helpful to visualize that differently in a roadmap. And the problem with roadmaps is that most people think they are linear, they tell the truth, they will happen exactly that way. But I have never seen a roadmap for real where there was no intersection or junction where you had to make a call. Do I go left? Do I go straight? Or do I go right? So maybe you can just lay it out for some of those people saying, oh, this is the roadmap we are seeing right now. If nothing changes, we should be there at this time, hopefully. But every sprint review, we will update the roadmap, reflect the changes, new learnings we were having. So it's a journey. And this really goes back to me also to the Agile Manifesto, responding to change over following a plan. Or going back to the users, responding to change over following a plan, or customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Yeah. And this is what makes Agile powerful.
Wonderful. Great help for that. Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
This is with respect to sprint review. So how does the sprint review support empirism in Scrum? And what might be the impact if the key members of our Scrum teams are absent during this particular event? Your
Yeah.
take on that? Yeah, it's a little tricky one. Yeah.
So if you think about it, what do we look at in the sprint review? We look at the product increment. Now, the product increment gives us transparency. The sprint review itself is inspection, and the adaptation would then happen in the product backlog. Now, the sprint review was never intended to be a demo. We show you something, and then you clap, and then you walk out. It's interactive. Hey, this is what we have. This is our show the working product. Share the definition of done, the quality standard you have to put in place to make sure that thing is really releasable. What you're having in demoing. And here I was using, you demo the product, that's okay, but it's not just a demo, it's an interactive session. And sometimes what I see is that the product is being shown to the product owner in this sprint review. No, and this is wrong. Essentially, the whole Scrum team, we have decided that this is releasable. It's done. Now we show it to the rest of the world. It's like in those American wedding movies, speak now or hold your peace forever. And if there's no pushback from any one of people in the room, then we can just say, okay, then it's ready to be shipped. No questions asked here anymore. And then you would talk about this. So this was our sprint goal. This is what we have achieved. Let's show how the functionality works. And actually, we have an idea about the next sprint goal. We would like to share this with you afterwards and see how you think about it, how you feel about it, if this would work for you. And if everybody says, yeah, looks good, no concerns, no hesitations about it, well, then you implement it again. And then in the next sprint review, we'll see what you have done. And then you can build again on top of that. So now if some key developers from the Scrum team are not there, I wouldn't worry too much unless, frequency is an important aspect again. Now, if they're not there once in a while because something else came up, which is more important, well, then it's like that. But if they never show up, it's a problem. Why? Find out what this is, and this is again where you as a Scrum Master, you have to really dig deep and discover those problems. And essentially, sometimes, if a developer says, I don't think I will add value going here today, I have so many other things I need to wrap up, and just say, okay, I trust your instinct. But if this is once in a while, there's no sweat. But otherwise, then I would expect that the developers who have been at the sprint review, that they take good notes or memorize everything, and then they bring it back to the team and just say, hey guys, this is what happened in the sprint review. This is what we've taken away. This is what we need to do because of that. And then they can clarify the questions from the other one. And then basically we have the team working together.
Great.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay. Let's move on. So let's say your team says that they can organize themselves and they don't need the daily Scrum anymore. So they believe that they can collaborate, without the daily Scrum. So how would you address this perspective? And you have to also ensure that they continue the value of the daily Scrum as a team. So yeah, that's a question, Ralph.
Okay. I mean, there's a difference between upholding Scrum, which I do, and being dogmatic. Again, look at the whole picture. If the team is delivering every sprint, reaching the sprint goals and all of the things and stuff is working fine, and they're just saying, you know what, we don't think we need the daily Scrum anymore because we really collaborate well together and everything, and just say, okay, are you sure about that? And if they say yes, I must just say, okay, well, if you want to give it a try, how about we do it for 2 sprints, and then we have a retrospective and we look at that and we find out how this worked out. But don't tell anyone anymore that you're doing Scrum, because you are not. You're still Agile, but it's not Scrum if you don't have a daily Scrum. That's where I really draw a line. And this is really kind of, because I see so many people tell me, well, Scrum doesn't work. And then you find out they do only parts of it. Cherry picking doesn't work. Now, you do that, and they still perform well and everything, and they're happy with it. So, as long as the outcome is there, why worry? Now, but then I would observe also the team, and maybe I find out that over time, things go a little bit wrong in the directions. There's not enough connection, cohesion within this sprint. Then I would probably bring up the idea of a daily Scrum again. I had situations where it was exactly like that, and I just said, actually, maybe those 50 minutes is well spent time, and let's try it again. And then they picked it up. So again, I wouldn't, for me, this question is interesting in the regard is because I really believe in Scrum. It would hurt my heart if they would stop doing the daily Scrum, but if everything is proving that they're still performant, they can do that, they don't have to do that, well, then that's also okay, but then it wouldn't be Scrum anymore.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so the next one is again a scenario that let's say you are into the middle of the sprint and the team find out that there is a specific task that they thought would be easy, but they now find out that it's harder than they thought initially. So as a Scrum
Yep.
Master, how do you guide and help the team in this kind of situation? Or let me give you a kind of scenario. So let's say they have to just, let's say, install a firewall, for example, for them. But now it's taking more time. Some technicalities are coming, some challenges are cropping up. There are other team dependencies which they just find out now during the sprint. So I'm just making it a little bit more complex for you, Ralph. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I would look back at the sprint goal. Now, if they still have reached the sprint goal by finding a different way of solving the problem, if they go out and talk, maybe make some suggestions to the product owner, and the product owner agrees, they work with another team and they find a workaround how they can make this happen, good for them. I would be really proud of them because they really are self-managing, and this is really what a good Scrum Master is trying to instill into the developers in the Scrum team, that they become self-managed, that they step up to the occasion, to the problems, take action, and are accountable for what they do. Not that they want to be spoon-fed. I mean, there's nothing better as a Scrum Master than say, hey, Scrum Master, we have a problem. Please advise us, help us what we need to do. Feels great, but you still spoon-feed them all the time. And this is really what you want to get out of that. And if I would have this situation and they just manage it on their own, and they have something which works in the sprint review and they can show what they have done, congratulations, good for them.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we are done for today's session. Wow, we just finished it under 40 minutes. Okay, so definitely we will have more sessions with you, Ralph, in the future. But for today's session, thank you. And thank you, friends, for joining us today's session. And we hope you find this session helpful and informative. And if you enjoyed this session, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, CareersTalk. And we hope to see you in our next session. Till then, bye. And thank you, Ralph, one more time.
Bye, see you soon, and thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you.